Facebook. I need to tilt this up a little bit. And I realized I needed to finish chewing my cough drop while we're getting this ready. As you can see, this is a very casual thing. I'm so excited. You may notice if you've tuned in before that I have a little bit of a different setup. Steven, I'm going to change this because on YouTube it's an actual delay. Okay. You may notice we're at a little bit of a different setting tonight. This is not Steven's apartment with the lovely bookcases. Now I have a Cinderella-sized clock here for our Golden Age concert tonight. It seriously is like a Cinderella-sized clock. But for those of you who are tuning in that may not know me, that were invited to this with a friend or family, my name is Jessamyn Anderson. I am a singer and speaker that resides just north of Indianapolis in Carmel, Indiana. And this is my 4th house concert during the quarantine. Still making music, trying to bring beauty to those of you who are stuck at home. And in the past, I've used YouTube karaoke tracks, but tonight, I'm really, really excited to be accompanied live on piano by Dee Dee Mantok, who is actually like accompanied my dad in college when they were at Purdue together. It's like a weird little small world. But tonight we're going to be presenting a set of Golden Age musical theater pieces. And the Golden Age is the era in the late 30s, 40s, and 50s. It's kind of said to end in like the mid-60s with the introduction of the musical Hair. That's a story for another day. So, and I will also be sharing some of the stories behind these songs, political context, social context, and personal stories. So, without further ado, this is It's a Grand Night for Singing from State Fair by Rodgers and Hammerstein. It's a grand night for singing, the moon is flying high, and somewhere a bird who is bound throwing his heart up in the sky. It's a grand night for singing, the stars are bright above, the earth is aglow, and to add to the show, I think I am falling in love, falling in love. Maybe it's more than the moon, maybe it's more than the moon, maybe it's more than the sight of the night and the light too lovely for words. Maybe it's more than the earth, shiny and silvery blue. Maybe the reason I'm feeling this way has something to do with you. It's a grand night for singing, the moon is flying high, and somewhere a bird who is bound to be heard is throwing his heart up in the sky. It's a grand night for singing, the stars are bright above, the earth is aglow, and to add to the show, I think I am falling in love, falling, 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 falling in love. Thank you, Dee Dee. I'm seeing a lot of comments come in. Okay, I just want to make sure, has anyone texted you about sound or anything? We're good? Okay, great, we're good. So as I said, I'm going to be sharing some of the stories behind these songs. I looked up some things about State Fair. There was nothing too scandalous about State Fair. Just an interesting fun fact is that it was actually a movie musical before it went to the stage. So Oscar Hammerstein wrote the screenplay. I think that's what I read today. Oscar Hammerstein wrote the screenplay. And the first stage adaptation was actually not until 1996, even though the musical was written in the, late 40s, early 50s. So that is it. The second song I'm going to sing is the song Impossible from Cinderella. And my mom always told me that when she was growing up, they would watch the Leslie Ann Warren version of Cinderella. It was on, yeah. It was on once a year. And I didn't see that version until much later in my life, but I grew up with watching on VHS tape the Brandy and Whitney Houston version of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. And what was really cool about that movie was it was extremely racially and culturally diverse. And so with Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella was not an all-white cast. It was a very diverse cast. And I mean, a lot of it made no sense. Like a white king and a black queen had a Filipino son. You know, it didn't like necessarily go. A groundbreaking production of Cinderella. And so my experience with the fairy godmother is Whitney Houston. Like, what a great introduction to the fairy godmother, Whitney Houston. So, I just think it's important to look at these stories and to recognize that even if they are matched, or they come from a background of a fairy tale that's set fine, when we take them out of their context, we can actually move different things around and really add a lot of them so that they appeal to a wider audience, and so that kids of all races and colors can look at that and see themselves in that story. So that was a really beautiful introduction to me for the musical Cinderella. So a quick little personal note is that when I performed at Opera in the Ozarks years ago as a summer program, we did a mashup version of Cinderella, and I was the fairy godmother in half of the shows, and I got to sing this song, and all the little girls just loved the fairy godmother. So it was really fun to play her, so this song holds a special place in my heart. This is Impossible. Impossible for a plain yellow pumpkin to become a golden carriage. Impossible for a plain country bum and a prince to join in marriage. And 4 white mice will never be 4 white horses. Such far-off infidelity, of course, is impossible. But the world is full of zanies and fools who don't believe in sensing the rules and won't believe what sensible people say. And because this daft and dewy adults keep building up impossible hopes, impossible are happening every day. Impossible, 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 impossible. Impossible, impossible, impossible for a plain yellow pumpkin to become a golden carriage. Impossible for and a prince to join in marriage. 4 white mice will never be 4 white horses. Such far-out fidelity, of course, is impossible. Who don't believe the sensing rules. They don't believe what sensible people say. And because these daft and dewy adults keep building hopes impossible, things are happening every day. Thank you. Thank you. If you want to sit like in a real chair, you can. Steven's like sitting up to the side. But thank you so much. So this, yeah, there are comfortable seats. So this next song, okay, in full disclosure, if there's anybody that knows any casting directors out there, this is my dream role, okay? I want to play Maria in The Sound of Music more than any other role in my whole life. That is such a dream of mine. The song is I Have Confidence from The Sound of Music. And this show, I mean, if you watch it, obviously you know that it takes place right as Germany is trying to occupy Austria, as World War II is unfolding. And this is the song that kind of teaches about what Captain Von Trapp was dealing with was cut from the movie that was actually in the musical. So there was this song, I can't remember the name of it, but there was a song that essentially it was between the Baroness, Uncle Max, and Captain Von Trapp. And they were basically asking Captain Von Trapp, they're saying, like, what are you willing to compromise to just put up with the Nazis? And he's like, absolutely nothing. Like, I'm not willing to compromise my pride in being Austrian, my pride in my country, the safety of my family. I don't believe in what these Nazis are coming in and doing, and so I refuse to compromise with them, which then forced him to protect his family and flee the country. But it's a really interesting look at what are you willing to put up with politically just to kind of like coast through life instead of standing up for what you believe in. And in the end, Captain Von Trapp stands up for what he believes in and flees Austria. Also, Christopher Plummer is Captain Von Trapp, my forever childhood crush. I just think he is like one of the most handsome men in Hollywood in that movie. So I love this. But this is one of my favorite songs in the movie. I love this whole sequence of Maria leaving the convent, going to meet Von Trapp family, and she is just trying to build confidence in herself. So this is I Have Confidence. What will this day be like? What will my future be? I wonder. It could be so, it could be out in the world to be free. My heart should be wildly rejoicing. Oh, her with me. I've always longed for adventure, to do the things I've never dared. And here I am facing adventure, and why am I so scared? A captain with 7 children. What's so fearsome about that? Oh, I must stop these doubts, all these worries. If I don't, I just know I'll turn back. I must dream of the things I am seeking. I am seeking the courage I lack. The courage to face them with reliance. Face my mistakes without defiance. Show them I'm worthy, and while I show them, I'll show me. So let them bring on all their burdens. I'll do better than my best. I have confidence they'll put me to the test, but I'll make them see I have confidence in me. Somehow I will impress them. I will be firm but kind, and all those children, heaven bless them, they will look up to me and mind me. With each step I am more certain everything will turn out fine. I have confidence in mine. They'll have to agree I have confidence in me. I have confidence in sunshine. I have confidence in rain. I have confidence that spring will come again. Besides which, see, I have confidence in me. Strength doesn't lie in numbers. Strength doesn't lie in wealth. Strength lies in nights and peaceful slumbers. When you wake up, wake up! It's healthy. All I trust, I give my heart to. All I trust becomes my own. I have confidence in confidence alone. Oh, I have confidence in confidence alone. Besides which you see, I am confidence in Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna take these bracelets off because they keep clacking around everywhere, and I hope you can't hear that. I'm just gonna set them over. Thank you all so much. I love that song. I love that musical. I remember talking to someone a few years ago about it, saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna play that role on stage," and they're like, "Good luck, because the movie's better than any stage production that's ever been." I was like, "That's true, because the movie's literally perfect, so it's really hard for stages to pull off the Sound of Music when you have a literal house in the background of the movie." So good luck with that. This next one is from a musical that I just love the music from. I've never been in it or seen much about it, but it's Wonderful Town, which the music is by Leonard Bernstein. And I have some notes because I did a lot of research this week. So one of the questions that's political correctness, because all of the characters in this are kind of they're almost caricatures of that time period. So it takes place in 5. So we have to put this in historical context. In that time, there weren't a lot of like what we consider now to be normal or social justice that is just like average in our society did not exist back then. Segregation was still very active. There was a lot of, there weren't like the Disability Act, for example, was not in place yet. So there were all of these things that we consider to be normal, integration, accessibility for disabled people, all sorts of things that were not exactly handled politically correctly in the show. So ask yourself the question of like, okay, do we look at the historical context and like let it go, or do we question it? And I'm gonna leave that up to you. But this is A Little Bit in Love from Wonderful Town, and if my high school voice teacher Maggie is watching this, this is for you, because you introduced me to this song, and I have always loved it. So this is A Little Bit in Love. I'm a little bit in love, never felt this way before. I'm a little bit in love, or perhaps a little bit more. When he looks at me, everything's hazy and all out of focus. When he touches me, I'm in the spell of a strange hook. So I don't know, I'm so I don't know what I know. If it's love, then it's lovely. It's so nice to be alive when you meet someone who bewitches you. Will he be my all, or did I just fall a little bit in love? When he looks at me, everything's hazy and all out of focus. When he touches me, I'm in the spell of a strange hocus pocus. It's so I don't know. I'm so I don't know, but I know if it's love, then it's lovely. It's so nice to be alive when you meet someone who'll be with you. Will he be my all, or did I just fall a little bit in love? Thank you. Like bow to two screens. It's like the woman at the end of Sound of Music, or the talent show of the Sound of Music, when she's like bowing as she walks off the stage. Okay, the next one. So the next one is a song from the musical Pajama Game. This song is sung by Sid Soroki, who's not a female. It's a male character. He's the lead. In the revival, he's played by Harry Connick Jr., which is also swoon-worthy. But this song, I just love this song. It's called Hey There. And a little bit of context about the Pajama Game. So this musical takes a really interesting look at a strike. A factory is a pajama making factory, and the workers are trying to raise. And so Sid, the character I'm going to sing the song, he comes in. He's been hired to kind of like dial down the rate, get the workers back in line and get them to stop asking for money. But he ends up falling in love, of course, with the leader of the kind of the activists that are trying to get this raise. And then he ends up uncovering the truth of where the raise money has gone, and it's been used unfairly by the owner of the factory. So this musical just takes a look at the power of unions in that time and how they had to band together and what happens when someone in power listens to the people he's trying to lead so that he can better understand their perspective and dialogue with them. Happened in real life? Okay, this is Hey There from Pajama Game. Hey there, you with the stars in your eyes. Love, you've never made a fool of you. You used to be too wise. Hey there, you on a high-flying cloud. Though she won't throw a crumb to you, someday she'll come to. Better forget her, her with her nose in the air. She'll have you dancing on a string, and she won't cry. Won't you take this advice? I hand you like a brother. to be two eyes. Hey there, you on that high-flying cloud. Though she won't throw a crumb to you, someday she'll come to you. Better forget her with her nose in the air. She'll have you dancing on a street, break it and she won't care. Won't you take this advice? I hand you like a brother. Or are you not seeing things too clear? Are you too in love to hear? Is it all going in one ear and out the other? Thank you. I don't know why I like stomp every time I take a bow. I feel like it's like my fun move there. Again, that was Hey There from Pajama Game. Okay, so this next one, I'm actually going to read you a quote. So this next song is Mr. Snow from Carousel. Another show I would love to be in. Give me any female role in that show. I don't even have to care. I don't care if I have to wait till I'm 60 and can play Nettie. Nettie's the one who sings You'll Never Walk Alone. So she's a really pivotal character in that show. But Mr. Snow, so a couple of really interesting facts. First of all, Audra McDonald, who's one of my favorite Broadway actresses, she is the first Black actress to ever play this role, Carrie Pipridge, in Carousel, and then she ended up winning her first Tony Award for that. Her first of 6 Tony Awards. She has won in every independent female category, including supporting actress in a musical, leading actress in a musical, supporting actress, and then leading role in a play. I think that's what it is. So 6 Tony Awards. So she's won more individual Tony Awards than any other person in the history of Broadway. So that's really cool. So this role in Carousel was the first Black Carrie Pipridge that was ever on Broadway. So that's really cool. And then the interesting thing about this show is it's actually a very, very dark show. And a lot of times musicals in this time, like I've said in some of my social media and my emails, it gets this, what's the word I'm looking for? Reputation for being very light and fluffy. Carousel is not light and fluffy. It deals with a suicide. It deals with abuse inside of a marriage. It deals with a lot of very interesting dynamics between characters and a look at like what are you willing to sacrifice for love? How much can you forgive someone? What do you do after they've passed? How do you deal with negative feelings toward them? And the interesting thing about that is that this show premiered on Broadway weeks before World War II ended in Europe and a few months before World War II ended in the Pacific. And so Oscar Hammerstein's grandson said this about Carousel. He said, Carousel tells the story of a doomed love between a brutish carnival barker with his ignominious death. The second act finds him in heaven, where God offers him the opportunity to make amends for his loathsome behavior. Despite the fact that he fails to do so, the audience empathized with his all-too-human efforts to offer advice, to seek forgiveness, to complete an unfinished life, and to bid a proper goodbye from beyond the grave. A war-weary world was having the very same conversation with itself. So that's something interesting. The next time you watch Carousel, think about the context of that within World War II and the questions that it was asking as we were grieving the loss of so much life. So this is not a dark song. This is Mr. Snow from Carousel. His name is Mr. Snow, and an upstanding man is he. He comes home every night in his round-bottom boat with a net full of herring from the sea. An almost perfect beau, as refined as a girl could wish. But he spends so much time in his round-bottom boat that he can't seem to lose the smell. The first time he kissed me, the whiff of his clothes knocked me flat on the floor of the room. But now that I love him, my heart's in my nose, and the fish is my favorite perfume. Last night he spoke quite low, and affairs And both of us look a little dreamy-eyed, a bride in a cottage to the ocean side, where the salty breezes blow. He'll carry me across the threshold, and I'll be as meek as a lamb. And he'll set me on my feet, and I'll say kind of sweet, Mama Snow, here I am. Then I'll kiss him so he'll know that everything'll be as right can be. Cottage by the sea with me, for I love that Mr. Snow. That young seafaring, bold and daring, baby whispered, overbearing, darling, Mr. Snow. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see, I have 5 more. I think we're halfway through. We're halfway through. Usually I bring my no watch on, so. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I don't need notes to talk about this one. So this next piece is from Annie Get Your Gun. Annie Get Your Gun. Annie Oakley was one of my dream roles as a kid. I don't know if I'm a good fit for her anymore, because I used to be a belter, and then I had training, and now I'm not like a belter anymore. I loved this show as a kid, and I used to sing along to the Bernadette Peters 99 revival all the time. But it was in the show at a Highlight Opera a few summers ago that I really learned about the different things that were challenging politically in the show. 2 things. One, there's a song in the original show called I'm an Indian Too that Annie Oakley sings, and we're like, that's horrifying. Okay, but the question you have to look at is Annie Oakley was actually made an honorary Sioux Indian. She was welcomed as an honorary Sioux Indian. And in the lyrics, they're naming different things about that Native American culture. And so you have to ask yourself, is it just controversial because we're hesitant to talk about that time in America's history? Or what? So that's a really interesting thing. So that song was actually cut out of the version we did. That song was cut out of the revival. That's interesting. The other thing, and this is what gets me ugh. So in the show, Annie Oakley is this incredible sharpshooter. And she gets picked up by Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. And she is now kind of in this competition with Frank Butler, and they end up falling in love. But Frank Butler is the star sharpshooter in this show. And eventually he gets so fed up because Annie beats him in some different competitions and starts to be more popular and more of a celebrity than he is about it. And so he leaves the relationship. And she goes off on her own and continues growing in stardom. But she's Frank and she wants to be with him. So she gets this advice that she should set up a sharpshooting competition and purposefully lose the contest so that Frank will want her back. And she does it. And that is not the kind of man you want. A man needs to be confident enough in his own abilities that the woman that he is with should be strong enough to be successful. He should be lifting her up and celebrating what she's good at, not trying to tear her down so that he can be the #1 star on the show. So I take real issue with that. And I remember when we did the show in Ohio, all of the people in the cast were like, wait a second, what? This is horrible. We can't do this ending. And it really takes a look at that sexism that was happening in show business and what were the women good for versus what the men were good for. So that's a really interesting thing about the end of that show. And so I take real issue with the way that show is portrayed in the end. And it also reminds me of Grease. How in the end, to get Danny back, Sandy turns into this kind of sexy, black spandex red lipstick girl to win him back, and then everything's kosher. No, it's not. You do not need a chance to love you. And with that, I'm going to sing a song. This is, they say, he's laughing over here. This is, They Say It's Wonderful from Annie Get Your Gun. Rumors fly, and you can't tell where they start. It concerns a person's heart. said it. I know I never read it. I only know they tell me that love is grand. And the thing that's known as romance is wonderful. In every way. So they say, you leave your house a morning, and without any warning, sobbing people shouting that love is grand. And to hold a man in your arms is wonderful, wonderful. In every way. So they say. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, oh, interesting. I didn't even plan this, but these last 4 shows, actually, well, Anna was aiming to get your gun. I've been in. Okay, so the last of these shows, I've been in all of the rest of. I've been starting with that one. I've been in the rest of these shows, so I have some interesting stories about these. What? It's a star. It's a star. No, I went to Brooklyn. Sorry. Okay, choking on water. So, this next song is from Oklahoma. Yes, it will probably be stuck in your head for the rest of the week. I'm not apologizing. So, what's interesting about Oklahoma? It was based on based on a play called, oh gosh, There Grow the Lilacs. I think that's what the name of it was. I forgot to write that down. I think it's called There Grow the Lilacs, or Grow, something like that. And in the show, there's a character named Judd Fry, who is very often, probably majority of the times, any production I've seen, he's been villainized. So he is the villain in the show, he's the bad guy. But for some reason, the lead girl, Lori, is attracted to Judd, and she's trying to navigate, like, should I pick Curly or should I pick Judd? And it all plays out on who she chooses to go to the box social with. And this all plays out in this beautiful ballet dream sequence. What was interesting about the character of Judd Fry is that in the play, not in the musical, but in the play that it was based off of, the character Judd Fry was half Cherokee Indian. And he was also the town drunk. And so in that time, Judd, as a character, kind of started to represent the other. Like, he was the outsider. He was the outcast. He was poor. He was a blue-collar worker. He never appears to be, like, as white as everybody else in the show. And he's often portrayed, like I said, as a villain, which is never said anywhere in the script that he's the bad guy. But it's also often never talked about why Lori is attracted to him. So in a recent production in Oklahoma, they really kind of broke into that and, like, went away from that villain to look at why Lori would have been attracted to Judd, what makes him representative of the other, and how do you navigate culture, because everybody else in the show is very much white. The characters are white, and they are this town of Claremore is located 60 miles from all of these Indian territories where all of these Native Americans had been shoved. And now we're, like, celebrating the foundation of the state of Oklahoma. And so it's very interesting. Judd is like, he was the other, he was the outsider, and in the play, the half Cherokee, he was kind of representative of how we may have approached Native American culture in that time when Oklahoma premiered. So an interesting fact about Oklahoma in the history just of musical theater is that it's considered the first book musical. What does that mean? Well, it means that the songs in the show actually move the plot along. Beforehand, we had shows where you could pick and choose the songs and put them where you wanted them, and they didn't really move the plot along. They were just there as little, like, sassy numbers in the show. But Oklahoma tied all of these things together, and so it's a book musical, meaning that the songs create a story arc. So that's something interesting about Oklahoma for you. So it really was an innovative ballet in a way that no one had ever seen on a Broadway stage. So Again, just as Carousel's really dark, Oklahoma has some dark parts, but this is a really lighthearted song. This is Ado Annie singing I Can't Say No. It ain't so much a question of not knowing what to do. I've known what's right and wrong since I've been 10. I heard a lot of stories and I reckon they are true. About how girls are put upon by men. I know I mustn't fall into the pit, but when I'm with the feller, I forget. I'm just a girl who can't say no. I'm in a terrible fix. I always say, come on, let's go. Just when I ought to say nix. When a first tries to kiss a girl, I know she ought to give his face a smack. As soon as someone kisses me, I somehow sort of want to kiss him back. I'm just a fool and life's all low. I can't be prissy and quaint. Ain't the type that can faint. How can I be what I ain't? I can't say no. What you gonna fella gets flirty and starts to talk purty? What you gonna do? Supposing that he says that your lips are like cherries or roses or berries. What you gonna do? Supposing that he says that you're sweeter in cream and he's gotta have cream or die. What you gonna do when he talks that way? Spit in his eye? I'm just a girl who can't say no, can't seem to say it at all. I hate to disappoint a beau when he's paying a call. For a while I am refined and cool, sitting on my velveteen settee. Then I think of that old golden rule and do for equity. I'm just a fool when life's all low. Wait, that's a funny line. We're gonna go back and do that. Can we go to I Can't Resist a... Alright. I can't resist a Romeo in a sombrero and chaps. Soon as I get on their lips, something inside of me snaps. I can't say no. Thank you, Dee Dee. Oh my gosh, thank you. It has been so much fun. So when I was in that show, I was in that show in high school my junior year, and I played Aunt Eller, who doesn't really have a lot of fun songs. They gave me a little piece of Oh What a Beautiful Morning at the end, but she's the old lady.
That would be me.
But what's cool about the character Aunt Eller, and same with the character Nettie, who sings You'll Never Walk Alone in Carousel, Aunt Eller, the neatest thing, the most fun about playing that role was that she's kind of the glue of the cast. And so I had scenes with like every in the show, which was really fun. Because a lot of times you get these isolated character couples, right? Like you have, you know, the love interest couples. But being the old woman, I didn't have a love interest. And I got to be in scenes with all of these different actors and actresses, which was really cool. Okay, so this next one, it's from The Music Man. I played Marion Carew in the 5th grade, Music Man Junior at Orchard Park Elementary School. My Harold Hill was 4 inches shorter than me. That was fun. We also sang the same octave because, you know, puberty hadn't really hit yet. But I did some research again about The Music Man in its kind of political and historical context, and it's fascinating. So here's what I'm going to share with you. The Music Man premiered on Broadway within months of the premiere of West Side Story. And if you've seen West Side Story, you know that it deals with a lot of racial tension between the Puerto Ricans and the Sharks and the Jets. And so there's a lot of turmoil. It's a very trying show, and the composers, which were Leonard Bernstein and Stephen Sondheim did the lyrics, that was a very strong statement to that show. So at the same time, you have The Music Man, which is portraying like ideal white America, essentially. in Iowa, which is what Iowa was in the time that Music Man took place. I mean, that is what it was. It was an accurate portrayal of that town, but when it's up against West Broadway, it's like, what are we trying to promote in American society? So that was kind of questionable for a lot of people. The movie version of The Music Man, we are just a few years after it came out on Broadway, and that was in 1962 that the music came out. So think about 1962. We have the sexual revolution, the rise of rock and roll. It's the middle of the civil rights movement, and we've got this like white Americana musical winning all these awards on Broadway. So it's just this is the question I'm going to pose to you, Music Man. And I'm not going to answer it for you because I don't know my thoughts. I want you to just something to think about, which is, does entertainment always have to make a statement, and does it always have to political and social context of the day that you're staging it in, or can it just be pure entertainment? But if it's pure entertainment, do you still need to be paying attention to casting diverse casts and dealing with the political context, but can it just be pure entertainment? Like, what do you have to do? So that's a question to ask yourselves about the purpose of entertainment. But this is Till There Was You from The Music Man, and I was thinking about singing it like it would have sounded when I was in 5th grade, but it just really doesn't cut it because I had no vibrato and it just wasn't, it was cute when in the 5th grade. It was pretty good for a 5th grader, but I'm just going to sing this as I would now. So this is Till There Was You. There were bells on the hill, but I never heard them ringing. Oh, I never heard them at all till there was you. There were birds in the sky, but I never saw them winging. No, I never saw them at all till there was you. And there was it, and there were wonderful roses. They turned in sweet, fragrant meadows of dawn and blue. There was love all around. I never heard it singing. No, I never heard it at all till there was you. There was love all around, but I never heard it singing. No, I never heard it at all till there was you. Thank you. Like bowing to Facebook and YouTube. Okay. So this next song, if you know me, you know South Pacific holds a very dear place in my heart. It was the show I did in college. I played Nellie Forbush my senior year in college, and it's still my favorite role I've ever played, favorite production I've ever been in. And I ended up writing my second semester, senior year, music history paper on South Pacific, and here is why. One of the fascinating things about South Pacific is that there is no human antagonist in the show. So in Oklahoma, right, you have Judd, who's often the villain. In Cinderella, you have the evil stepmother and her minions, the stepsisters, you know. But in South Pacific, there is no antagonist. The antagonist in the show is racism. And that's what each of these characters confronts in their relationships. So you have Lieutenant Cable, who falls in love with an island girl named Liat, and has to navigate like why he can't just marry her and bring her home to Pennsylvania. And then we have Nellie, in love with Emile Debec, this Frenchman who lives in Ireland, right? No problem, he's a Frenchman, he's a white European. But he had a relationship with an island woman and had 2 children with her. And so he had mixed race children. And when she finds this out, she leaves him and can't explain why she has such a problem with it. And so she has to confront her own racism that she was born with. She says in this scene, I was born this way. Challenges her and said, you aren't born this way. Like, this is something you had to be taught as a child. And that scene, I remember working on that scene, and it was the hardest. And the director, the way he got me to feel what Nellie was feeling was he said, you're basically hanging on the side of a building and your fingers are slipping. Like, that's what's going on. Is she has held on to these ideals her whole life, and now she's being confronted with the fact that she's not as welcoming and open-hearted as she thought she was, because she's been raised in a racist community in Arkansas in the early part of the 20th century. And so this show really tackled racism in a time when it was heavy in segregation. And so the song I'm going to sing is the song Lieutenant Cable sings to Emile after this whole scene happens, when Nellie's like, I can't explain this, I have to go. And Lieutenant Cable is trying to explain to Emile where this racism comes from. And I loved being in that show and learning about it, and I feel like it's such a relevant topic for us to look at, is like, where do our ideals come from, and how do we approach other people, and what is taught to us, and where do we learn it? So this is a very, very short song, but it's powerful. So this is You've Got to Be Carefully Taught from South Pacific. You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be taught. You've got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are oddly made, and people whose skin is a different shade. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be carefully taught. Thank you. It's interesting that song actually goes into a reprise, but that's not like it's literally a minute. It's very short. It goes into a reprise where Emile sings part of it about his experience with the Americans being on an island and learning about their discriminatory tendencies. And fascinating. And then he goes into talking about losing Nellie. This nearly was mine. And he feels like he's just lost her for the most inexplicable reason, in that she just can't see past the color of his children's skin. And then Nellie ends up confronting that and learning how to love. So it's a beautiful look back. So we have one song. I'm gonna need some serious water before this one. Oh my gosh.
I need something a little heavier.
It's an intense one. So, okay, so this last song of the evening is from Hello Dolly. And I was in Hello Dolly in high school. I played Dolly my senior year. And they told me, they were like, this is the last time we're going to play this until you're at least 40. Because she's a middle-aged woman in the show. Which, interestingly enough, when they cast Barbara Streisand in Hello Dolly in the movie, she was 27. I'm 27. I am not old enough to play Dolly. I do not have enough life experience to be legitimately cast as her in professional production. And Streisand came out later and said, like, that was a professional mistake. I should not have taken that role. I was too young. But we're going to look again in the social context of this one at sexism. So in the show, Dolly Levi is a widow, and she was deeply in love with her husband. But she, as a woman in the 1890s in Yonkers, New York, cannot really make a living without a man. She needs for social status and for financial purposes. So she goes after Horace Vandergelder, who is this filthy rich curmudgeon of a man. And in the movie, you never quite see chemistry between the two people, which is actually was off screen. That was a problem. Like they did not like each other. And I always asked when I was in the show, I was like, I just don't understand why she goes after him to get him to fall in love with her. But really, what she needs stable man in her life to provide for her, and she knows that Horace can do that. And she also knows that when she has her hands on his money, she can do the right thing with the money. And so she has this monologue, and towards the end of the show, all about how her late husband, his view on money was you should spread it around like manure. That's what the monologue is about. Is we have to spread money around, encouraging young things to grow. We can't just keep it for ourselves and expect change to happen in our world. And that, I think, is still something that we can look at, but especially in the context of that sexism where she as a woman was very savvy and was a very savvy businesswoman, but socially she didn't have status because she wasn't married. So just a really interesting look at that show, because the music, again, is phenomenal. It's by Jerry Herman. Jerry Herman's one of my favorite Broadway composers because everything he does just sparkles. All of his music just has this like sparkle in it, and I love it. He also wrote Mame and La Cage aux Folles, which was the first Broadway show I ever saw. And so this was my favorite song to sing in the show. We're doing the movie version, not the play version, because the play version is very slow. But this is so long, and this takes place right after Dolly and Horace have had this dinner that was very interesting. And she basically leaves him in this song to play hard to get, and then he ends up coming and falling at her feet in the end after the show. She leaves the stage after this song. So this is the last song of the night. Thank you all for tuning in. Oh, if you like to tip the musician, that's me. You can do that on Venmo or PayPal. My information is in the descriptions, both on YouTube and on Facebook. I put a lot of time and energy into these shows, and it really means a lot to have financial support, especially in the midst of everything that's going on. So all my gigs were canceled. So it's been really fun to put these shows together, but it's also a lot of hard work. So if you feel inclined, you can tip me on Venmo or PayPal. So thank you so much for being here. You enjoy So Long, Dearie. Goodbye! 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 Don't try to stop me, Horace. Please! Wave your little hand and whisper so long, dearie. You ain't gonna see me anymore. When you discover that your life is dreary, don't you come a knocking at my door. I'll be all dolled up and singing this song that says, you dog, I do so. So wave your little hand and whisper so long, dearie, dearie. Should have said so long ago. Because you treated me so rotten and rough, I have had enough of feeling low. So wave your little hand and whisper so long, dearie, dearie. Should have said so long ago. That choo-choo calling me onto a fancy new address. Yes, I can hear that choo-choo calling me on Happiness Express. I'm gonna learn to dance and drink and smoke a cigarette. I'm gone as far away from Yonkers as a girl can get. So and on this cold winter night's Horace, you can snuggle up to your cash register. It's a little lumpy, but it rings. Don't come a knocking, I'll be all done up and singing that song that says, you dog, I told you so. So Horace, you will find your life a sad old story. You'll be living in that lonesome territory.
back.
This is my lovely piano. Oh my gosh, things falling off tables. This is Dee Dee. She is magnificent piano. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed the show. You can end it, and I'll end it on Facebook.